Easy Explain, The Problems of Philosophy by Bertrand Russell, chapters 1 through 3. So let's start working through this here, kicking things off with chapter 1, Appearance and Reality. So we're going to start this here with Russell by considering a table. So Russell says experience has taught us to construct the real shape from the apparent shape. And the real shape is what interests us as practical men. But the real shape is not what we see. It is something inferred from what we see. And what we see is constantly changing in shape as we move about the room, so that here again the senses seem not to give us the truth about the table itself, but only about the appearance of the table. So if you've been following along for the past few years, this might sound Cartesian to you, right? Just doubting our senses, our perceptions, appearances versus reality. So this is very much so the theme here. This is where Russell's kicking things off. We're looking at Cartesian doubt. So let's keep going down this doubt hole. So Russell goes on to say, thus it becomes evident that the real table, if there is one, is not the same as what we immediately experience by sight or touch or hearing. The real table, if there is one, is not immediately known to us at all, but must be an inference from what is immediately known. Right? Echoes of Descartes here. So it's a big theme of chapter 1, parsing this out, just to what degree can we trust our sensations and perceptions of those sensations. So moving into chapter 2, the existence of matter, right? See how the theme is developing here. So we're actually going to reconsider the table as we consider the existence of matter itself, not just the appearance and reality, but what is matter. Let's keep going with this table example. So Russell says, when we have enumerated all the sense data, which we should naturally regard as connected with the table, have we said all there is to say about the table? Or is there still something else, something not a sense datum, something which persists when we go out of the room? Common sense unhesitatingly answers that there is, unless you're Berkeley, right? Berkeley would say if something is not being perceived, then we can't say that it exists. But that's going to come up later. Let's keep going on this for now. Russell continues, what can be bought and sold and pushed about and have a cloth laid on it and so on cannot be a mere collection of sense data. If the cloth completely hides the table, and therefore, if the table were merely sense data, it would have ceased to exist when you cover it with the tablecloth. And the cloth would be suspended in empty air, resting by a miracle in the place where the table formerly was. This seems plainly absurd, but whoever wishes to become a philosopher must learn not to be frightened by absurdities. So you're saying, right, we can logically work through this to know that even when we can't see the table, when we cover it with a tablecloth, the table's still there because the tablecloth is on the table, right? This is a relational extension. But, he's playing around with this philosophically. He says it might seem absurd, but hey, let's consider it. Another interesting thing here, if you're familiar with the thought experiment of Schrodinger's cat, and Schrodinger was coming up with this thought experiment in the 1930s, and mind you, Russell's now working in 1912 here. So the idea is effectively if you put a cat into a box, you close up the box, you effectively can't know for sure whether the cat is alive or dead if you're not perceiving it, if you have no other information, no other sense data to determine if the cat is alive or dead. So what's coming up now is, I think, a very similar and interesting thought experiment that Russell has that is actually, ahead of Schrodinger's cat by about 20 years. So here Russell says, if the cat appears at one moment in one part of the room and in another part, it is natural to suppose that it has moved from the one to the other, passing over a series of intermediate positions. But if it is merely a set of sense data, it cannot have ever been in any place where I did not see it. Thus we shall have to suppose that it did not exist at all while I was not looking, but suddenly sprang into being in a new place. Right? So seeing how this is kind of like Schrodinger, Russell continues, if the cat exists, whether I see it or not, we can understand from our own experience how it gets hungry between one meal and the next. Or, at least our cats, Fig and Peanut, they're always hungry. But it does not exist when I'm not seeing it. It seems odd that appetite should grow during non-existence as fast as during existence. If the cat consists only of sense data, it cannot be hungry, since no hunger but my own can be a sense datum to me. Interesting point. Thus the behavior of the sense data, which represent the cat to me, though it seems quite natural and regarded as an expression of hunger, becomes utterly inexplicable when regarded as mere movements and changes of patches of color. I would love to know what cat specifically Russell had in mind for this. Not sure if he had his own cats or not, but again, he's considering the continuity of existence here, right? Not just existing and non-existing, just like states of hunger, just like cats moving about a room and not always being able to find them. I think it's interesting here that this is 20 years before Schrodinger, and it's a good example. He also does a similar thing with Quine's web of belief. Now, Quine was writing this in the 1950s, but here in 1912, Russell does something similar. If you're not familiar with Quine's web of belief, another quick overview of that. So effectively, picture a spider web, and picture this is how you build your knowledge, this is how you build your beliefs, and you have to start in the middle, in that little hexagonal or octagonal shape of the little strands. Those are going to be your foundational beliefs, and you're going to work out from there and keep building out from there, and they're all going to become interconnected. And it becomes harder and harder to change those integral structural beliefs once you have the whole web built, right? That's the idea that, we really think about how our beliefs are tied together and justified and opined upon each other and built upon each other. And sometimes it can be really hard to change those foundational ones through our worldviews. So let's see what Russell has to say about this in 1912. He says, philosophy should show us the hierarchy of our instinctive beliefs, beginning with those we hold most strongly, and presenting each as much isolated and as free from irrelevant additions as possible. It should take care to show that, in the form in which they are finally set forth, our instinctive beliefs do not clash, but form a harmonious system, maybe a web. There can never be any reason for rejecting one instinctive belief except that it clashes with others. Thus, if they are found to harmonize, the whole system becomes worthy of acceptance, right? Web of belief. I think it plays really well into that. But again, we'll get to Quine in another 40 years or so. And finally here, chapter 3, now that we know that matter does exist, at least to some degree, let's consider the nature of matter. And one thing I wanted to highlight here, we're just wrapping up Bergson. We're just coming out of Bergson's creative evolution. So I think this is a nod to Bergson in at least one way that Russell has here. So Russell says, in saying that the time order which events seem to have is the same as the time order which they really have, it is necessary to guard against a possible misunderstanding. It must not be supposed that the various states of different physical objects have the same time order as the sense data which constitute the perceptions of those objects. So go back to Bergson, his flow of time, how we are enduring through that, how our knowledge and our memory works in a cinematographical way. And sometimes our understanding and our perception, our experience of our flow through time can be a little clunky, a little misaligned. And I think that's what Russell is getting at here as well. So maybe this is a nod to Bergson. That's all we're going to touch on for the third chapter. Like I said, these videos are going to have a lot in them. But for now, hope this helps.